I'm Michael Donvito with the Close Combat Institute. We're here with Skallywag Tactical. We have a few knives that we're going to be working for some meat cutting demonstrations, and then later on we're going to try to do some destruction demos on them. All right, so we have the standard Guardian here. Is a design that I developed with Skallywag Tactical. They built a knife made out of D2. The purpose of this blade was for a CQB environment. Traditionally, we would utilize this off of our left hand. Finger goes directly in, grabbing. The reason for the size of the blade is so that if you're burying the blade directly into the side of the neck, it is long enough to penetrate down deep enough to hit the top of the heart, the aortic arch, and be able to route around in there. The hole of this looks like you can insert both fingers directly through. The purpose of the large diameter here is so that when it is on my chest and it is metal directly on metal, I in turn can reach up and know that I'm actually have a positive control over this blade as I draw, instead of having to look down and locate for this. And so it is one finger directly in, holding in a ice pick grip, and from that point you would be stabbing directly in or placing this on their face, neck area, driving across, and then using that to push that person away, then transitioning back to our primary and continuing to clear there. You can use this as a primary knife for knife fighting, or as a use. The rear hand is drawing, taking it and placing it in a hammer grip. If the pinky is directly into the loop, you have the ability to grip so that the notches here are placed directly into the thumb. So what happens is any type of impact, you can cause tearing and ripping from there. Serrations are placed on this blade so that once it is into the body, you have the ability to rotate, cut out. It is much harder to close that wound from there. And so what we'll do is we'll do a couple cutting demonstrations based off of the ice pick grip, and as well as some slashing. And so the first cut that we will be doing is across the body. So I'll step over here. The blade is going to go here and directly across. So this first cut, as I'm here, and as you'll see, it opens up and cuts directly through that material. And so that's just the serrations. If I take the tip of the blade for slashing and in turn cutting, I have the ability to cut, pretty much destroying that shirt, and we have damage there. Once again, this is meant for an ice pick grip. So if I'm in this position here, I'm moving around, the ability to bury that blade, turning it out and then ripping is going to cause a wound channel. I can bury my finger all the way through there as that's locking in. And so that would be that thrusting motion. I'm rolling it and then ripping that directly out. You can also go up into the gut or into the groin, doing the same rotation, pulling, and then pulling that directly out. It cut pretty easy, but the thing is that just like I had already known, once it gets to a point where it hits material, as it starts to cut, it pulls it off of the body and then it cuts down. So I mean, this is meant to be buried right into somebody's neck, just kind of to say, so that this cut here is traditionally more important on the shot than it is anything else. The stabbing all the way in, the rolling, and then the cut out. That deep giant hole right there is mainly where that design is. And so if you had it in, say, a hammer grip, and I stab it into the groin, and then I'm rolling it and I'm pulling this out, it creates a very large wound cavity underneath as that's locking in. So that's really where the serrations that I'm looking for, causing micro trauma while inside that body. So as it penetrates in, I could pull it directly out. And even if I did, this is still going to cause a lot more trauma than a straight edge blade. But once it's in the body, that roll, and that's one of the reasons for that loop. So one of the things that the loop allows you to do is once it's in the body, I can turn it and I use it to roll. And by doing so, it creates a very large wound cavity inside the body. Because of the loop, it also, if it ever gets stuck, is a lot easier for me to pull off of this as it comes out. Whereas if this was a straight handle, as the blood is directly on top, sometimes you'll slip off, sometimes it's just harder, especially if you hit bone or whatnot. So on this design, once it's directly in your hand, you do have the ability to hit. The grip allows a very strong position. So if you were to punch, hitting directly in, that rotation is going to cause a lot of damage. It also allows me, if their hands are up, to hit past their arms so it'll penetrate through, and then in turn I can bury that blade in. So what happens is I don't necessarily have to cause a cut to clear their arms. I'm just punching right through their guard, which is going to cause damage or hit them. And then as it penetrates their arms, it allows me, once it leaves the body, to understand that that tip is past, in which case that insertion is going to be much easier. And once again, the loop allows me to roll it, pull out, and then continue to cause cuts from there. And so this is a striking area. You have the ability to do so. It also allows you to create a very large stabbing surface. So what I mean by that is when my finger is all the way down at the bottom loop, there's only so much that is going to penetrate. So what's going to happen is I'm going to stab directly in. It's going to hit the bottom of my hand. When I drive my thumb all the way forward, it creates a much larger stabbing area. So now when I bury that all the way to the bottom of my hand, all of that is directly in their body as I'm turning it and ripping that out. And so you have the ability to hide it a little bit so that you can hit, or in turn, if you're just going to be going for stabbing and burying and utilizing, once it's inside someone's body, you can use it to kind of guide them around. That is the enhancement of that, and one of the reasons why I tell people only one finger directly in, as that's here. A couple other grips that you can work on is you can grab it as a traditional knife, so nothing really has to go into that hole. So I tell people use this as a guide, but sometimes I'll grab here and it's just basically a normal hammer grip position. I have the ability to stab in that position there. I also have the ability to cause cuts, which cut through the shirt, and in turn, looking for that cut there, you're locking in. So all of that in turn is part of this design. Serrations allow it, so I can place it directly on someone's face, and then I can cut down and across, or cut up and across to get that person off of me. I don't necessarily have to penetrate with the front of the blade. All I do is I put my hand almost like I'm stopping them, and then I'm just dragging it across. So you'd be cutting up the face like you're trying to cut their face off. This can be done with your right hand or your left hand. All I'm doing is I'm posting. So if I'm in a position where he has grabbed me or he is holding onto my weapon, I draw this and I'm almost pushing him away, and then in turn I'm just pressing up and pressing down. And just like with any type of blade design like this where you have a loop, you also have the ability, when it's in this position, to do any type of reloading, any type of malfunctions checks. You can run your pistol or your long gun the same way before this has to go back down. So we switched out the last slab of meat for some pork ribs here to show that taking the Guardian and a number of the other knives, regardless of stabbing through, what's it going to do to the bones here, and is it able to penetrate all the way in. So we'll test this out with shirt down. Because it's traditionally in an ice pick grip, from here I'm stabbing here again and cross. So that went in between, cutting. So that's the damage cut through the bone there. Go again. Yeah, so that's gonna rip here soon. So that was that first hit. So that cracked that. As we started to cut through, it not only cut easily through the shirt, but the tip was sharp enough that it caused a deep flesh cut right afterwards.